Radio every Saturday at 7:30 a.m. for A View from the Outside, hosted by Brereton Horne. A View from the Outside takes a look at key issues affecting St. Vincent and the Grenadines and gives a global perspective on how these issues are viewed. Host Brereton Horne will examine a variety of topics to enlighten, stimulate debate, and explore solutions. Hear the facts, hear the real-life stories, hear A View from the Outside. Join Brereton Horne at 7:30 a.m. every Saturday on NiceRadio for A View from the Outside.
There's a conspiracy going on here in this country. What a sad moment for we. They're trying to take rights and justice from we. I believe that wouldn't happen. We must take a stand and unite as one. And no matter what, for rights we have to fight back. I say we go fight for justice. We want we rights. Nobody can take away freedom. We want we rights. Yes, we walking for we rights. And we talking for we rights. So we marching for we rights. Nobody can take we rights. We demonstrating for we rights. We protesting for we rights. We picketing for we rights. Nobody can take we rights. We worry rights and justice. We worry rights and freedom. We worry rights and justice. So don't try to take we rights. We worry rights and justice. We worry rights and freedom. We worry rights and justice. So don't try to take we rights. We must let them know decisions they can make just so, and have us like Papi show. So all what they do and say, we must make them pay, and pay in a real big way. They must understand the power is in we hand. They should be ashamed and don't ever try that again. I say we go fight for justice. We worry rights. Nobody can take away freedom. We worry rights. Yes, we walking for we rights. And we talking for we rights. So we marching for we rights. Nobody can take we rights. We demonstrating for we rights. We protesting for we rights. We picketing for we rights. Nobody can take we rights. We worry rights and justice. We worry rights and freedom. We worry rights and justice. So don't try to take we rights. We worry rights and justice. We worry rights and freedom. We worry rights and justice. So don't try to take we rights.
Yes, good morning to you, Brereton.
Good morning to you, Justin.
Yes,
you seem as if you got your facts mixed up there. Good morning. How are you?
Yes. Well, I took a call just before you came in, and that sort of put me off. Yes, so morning, Saturday number 3 in month number 3 of 2018.
That's right. That's right.
You're moving along
absolutely
very fast indeed.
Yes, I'm listening to your music, and I heard you playing Holding On, Holding Strong for Better Days. Pretty good song, actually. I love the lyrics of that song. So maybe you have been having visions of you from the outside this morning.
Well, you know, a whole lot of stuff been bothering me for the week, and one of them is when I hear people making the statement that persons who dare to challenge will be dealt with, their political career will be handled by the massa.
Justin, sometimes when I see and hear what's happening in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I sort of question whether or not it's a mini Russian state operating or mini Venezuela operating in St. Vincent. But there you go.
The thing is, who are you working for? Is it yourself or for us?
Absolutely. And it goes to show when when power gets to some people, what power can do.
I know. Well, man, we're having a bright Saturday. No wonder why, that sort of walk-up music you had a while ago. The temperature is at 26.5.
I hope you replay that song sometime during the program. I quite like that
Holding
song.
On.
Yes, absolutely.
No problem,
I really like that song. So sometime during your program, I hope you replay it because I'll be listening.
Great.
Right. Yes, you're having good weather, but we are not.
I know. Okay, well, you go right ahead.
Thank you. Well, good morning to all listeners everywhere of NiceRadio, all listeners of this program, if you're from the outside. A special good morning to all those in the UK. And I specifically mentioned those in the UK this morning because the weather is not a very good one. In fact, we're having a repeat of the beast from the east, as it's called. And in fact, it's snowing in London this morning. The temperature is about 1 degree Celsius, which is about 34 degrees Fahrenheit. It's expected to snow throughout the day. So there you go. That's what the temperature and weather is like in London. And I say good morning to all those in the UK and asking you to wrap up warm and enjoy it for what it's worth. Special good morning to my good friend Guvara Leacock as well, who contributes regularly to this program. And we want to express thanks to him and ask him to enjoy the weather too. On a view from the outside this week being the 17th of March 2018, we look at protest, 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 with the view being that more Vincentians should stand up and peacefully protest wrongs that are taking place in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Protests have been used throughout history to effect changes in societies across the world and can be an effective tool for Vincentians in effecting change in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The Collins Dictionary defines protest as the act of saying or showing publicly that you object to something. Protest is an action word, and hence, if you protest against something or about something, you actively say or show publicly that you object to it by speaking out, standing up alone or in groups or marching around an area. The Constitution of St. Vincent and the Grenadines protects the right of Vincentians to protest peacefully. That right is enshrined in Chapter 1, Part 11, under protection of freedom of assembly and association. This section says, in part, and I quote, "Except with his own consent, a person shall not be hindered in the enjoyment of his freedom of assembly and association." That is to say, his right to assemble freely and associate with other persons, and in particular, to form or belong to trade unions or other associations for the protection of his interests. Of course, we must ensure that whatever legal requirements and permissions are needed to protest in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, or wherever Vincentians protest, are sought and met. Vincentians, wherever they protest, should also bear in mind that if we are protesting against reprehensible conduct in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, that during any protest, the behavior of those protesting should be exemplary. We must conduct ourselves properly and get the message out effectively. In recent times, Vincentians at home and in countries such as Canada, the United States of America, and the United Kingdom, and other countries as well, have staged several protests against the demagoguery that is taking place in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. On Saturday, the 24th of February 2018, there was a massive protest movement in all of those countries. Those protests showed by action and words that Vincentians in these countries, though not at home in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, are against the social, moral, and political decay which has seized our blessed country. There is a determination on the part of the protesters to bring worldwide attention to the atrocities taking place in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It would be remiss of us, on a view from the outside, if we do not mention the front line in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which has been protesting every day since the December 10th, 2015 general elections. Those elections are still unresolved, and the legitimacy of the government in St. Vincent and the Grenadines is questionable. It is widely believed that those elections were stolen. The front line has fearlessly, relentlessly, and tirelessly led the way in keeping the issue alive by protesting the legitimacy of the Unity Labour Party ULP government in the country. The front line has shown that there is nothing to fear but fear itself when it comes to standing up and protesting. The front line remains resolute and undaunted. It is imperative that Vincentians are reminded that the general elections of 2015 in St. Vincent and the Grenadines remain unresolved. And whilst the matter is before the court, there is absolutely nothing wrong with engaging in peaceful protest as an indication to those who act as government that the electorate is not happy with the fact that the elections appear on the evidence to be stolen. So why should we protest? Well, this week, on A View from the Outside, we share 3 reasons why we think it is necessary for Vincentians at home to become more engaged in protest. That is not to say that Vincentians abroad are not to continue to engage in protest. Our list is by no means exhaustive, and there are several valid reasons for protest. Firstly, protests show solidarity and unity. Very often, the establishment, and by example, the ULP government, maintains power by controlling the narrative from the views of the ordinary people, from which the views of the ordinary people are excluded. We see this all too often in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. For example, when the sex scandal, allegedly involving the son of the Prime Minister, Camilo Gonçalves, and Yogi Farrell broke, several persons close to the ULP establishment, except the main character himself, Camilo Gonçalves, who was told by his dad to maintain, quote-unquote, a dignified silence, spoke out and tried to control the narrative whilst trying to exclude the views of the ordinary common man. Camilo's brother, Storm Gonçalves, took to the radio to defend his brother and made claims that Yogi Farrell was mentally ill. The Prime Minister, Dr. Ralph Gonçalves himself, intimated similar sentiments in a subsequent press conference, and the ULP propagandists flooded the airwaves with their version of events. In the meantime, Yogi Farrell was, in the eyes of many, including legal practitioners around the Caribbean and the world, unjustly incarcerated at the mental health center. Protest against such control of the narrative empowers people and shows that there are others who know that what was being done to Yogi Farrell, for example, was unjust. Secondly, protest keeps issues alive and start debates. Apart from the legitimacy of the last general elections, other issues in St. Vincent and the Grenadines include accountability, especially for the construction of the international airport, rising crime, especially gun crimes, domestic violence and sexual abuse and other sexual offenses, and money laundering. These issues must never go unchallenged. They must never be, as we say colloquially in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, a 9 days talk. Those in power may ignore the ordinary person. In fact, at the opening of the last session of Parliament in January, the Prime Minister, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, referred to Vincentians who were protesting outside the Parliament building as a minority, quote unquote, a minority. His wife, Eloise Gonsalves, said that the protest was, quote, pathetic, unquote. While these statements are negative in themselves, there are two positive things we can take away from them. Firstly, they show that those in power are taking notice of the protest. And secondly, their comments have helped to highlight the disdain which they have for sections of the Vincentian society. If there was no protest, those comments would not have been made publicly, and the world would not have known the scant regard in which Dr. Ralph Gonsalves and his wife Eloise hold Vincentians. Thirdly, protest and protest alone can lead to significant change. Protest can lead to victory. Before victory is attained, though, it is quite possible for protesters to become despondent and give up, thinking that their efforts are in vain. However, we, on a view from the outside, hold the view and say, hold on, do not despair. Our history teaches us that protracted protests can lead to change. The enslaved populations, those who are in slavery throughout the Caribbean, including those in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, engaged in protest for 200 years in order to bring the evil system of slavery to an end. We, on a view from the outside, are of no doubt that it is possible that if Vincentians at home and abroad continue to protest peacefully about the issues that are affecting the nation, that there will be change in due course. There is no convenient and appropriate time to protest. In fact, just as the actions of politicians can be unpredictable, so too protest should be unpredictable. Whilst the vast majority of protests will be planned ahead of time, spontaneous protests are also viable. One would remember that on the 22nd of February 2018, a small but significant group of women protested Dr. Ralph Gonsalves while he was giving a lecture at the University of the West Indies, Cave Hill campus in Barbados. They were not Vincentian women, but they were protesting the issues affecting women in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Their protest was more or less spontaneous. The featured speaker and audience were not expecting them or their protest. In fact, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves informed the protesters that he would be willing to discuss the issue or the issues they were protesting at an appropriate time. as he was there to discuss disaster preparedness. Dr. Christina Hines, a lecturer at the university and the leader of the protest, informed him that the time was now. Dr. Hines is right. The time to protest is now. Protest, though peaceful, is never convenient and should never be convenient. It is meant to send a clear message that the protesters are not happy with what is being dispensed and that they seek change. Bob Marley, the late great Jamaican reggae singer, songwriter, the legend, said, "Get up, stand up." From the album Legend, he said, "Get up, stand up for your rights. Get up, stand up, don't give up the fight." Bob Marley, the legend, he encouraged protest. Vincentians should heed his call and get up, stand up for your rights. Wherever protests or marches, whenever there are protests or marches against injustice are planned in St. Vincent and the Grenadines or in other countries, Vincentians should get involved. Do not be on the wrong side of history. Get up, stand up for your right. Get up, stand up, don't give up the fight. Until next week, Justin and all the listeners, this is Brereton Horne with a view from the outside, thanking all those who feedback and ask you to continue to feedback, sending your email to aviewfromtheoutside@hotmail.com. That's aviewfromtheoutside@hotmail.com. Justin, have a pleasant Saturday.
Yes.
Enjoy your Sunday, and have a protest week ahead where you get up, stand up for your right.
All right,
all the best
man.
to you.
Yes, thanks for calling, man. And thank you, Brereton Horne, for reminding us that we are living an irony. Question, isn't the person who is at the wheel right now came in because of protests? Ask yourself that question.